Turns out, workplace stress and your brain. Your job might be actively shrinking your brain. Not metaphorically, not in some vague stress-induced way. We're talking measurable, detectable cognitive decline that compounds year after year, the kind of decline that looks a lot like the early stages of dementia. And the worst part? Some jobs do this way more than others. So which one is yours? The stakes couldn't be higher. We've spent decades chasing genetics, diet, exercise, sleep. Those all matter, obviously. But here's what researchers just discovered. Where you work, how much control you have there, and what emotional labor your job demands might matter just as much. Maybe more. Scientists at the University of Michigan wanted to know if we've been missing a huge piece of the dementia puzzle the whole time. And the answer is unsettling. Before this study, we had a pretty narrow picture of dementia risk. We knew about the obvious stuff. Age, family history, cardiovascular health, cognitive reserve from education. But we treated work like background noise. Work was just the thing you did to pay rent. A stressor, sure, but not a specific, measurable, trackable exposure that could literally reshape your brain over decades. This research changes that completely. It asks a question nobody had properly answered. What if different jobs create different patterns of damage? A team led by researchers Megan Walters and Lauren Zahodny at the University of Michigan spent years on this. They published their findings in August 2026 in Alzheimer's and Dementia, one of the field's top journals. These aren't people playing around. This is serious neuroscience, tracking real people over real time, trying to figure out which aspects of your working life actually predict how your cognition evolves as you age. Here's what they did. They grabbed 704 people from the Michigan Cognitive Aging Project. Average age was around 63. These weren't college kids or retirees. These were people in the thick of their careers or recently out. The researchers then took each person's main lifetime occupation and mapped it against 26 different workplace stressors. Not generic stress. Specific measurable dimensions. Things like job control, emotional labor, physical demands, interpersonal conflict, pace of work, exposure to hazards. Think of it like fingerprinting each job, creating a stress profile unique to that type of work. Then they measured everyone's cognitive function with a comprehensive neuropsych battery. Everything from memory to processing speed to executive function. And they followed these measurements over time to see whose brain was holding steady and whose was declining. What they found broke down into 5 distinct stressor profiles. And here's where it gets interesting. People weren't evenly distributed across those profiles. Black participants were significantly more likely to be stuck in the higher stress profiles. But here's the crucial part. That difference almost completely disappeared once researchers accounted for education. This isn't about race-driving stress exposure. It's about education and opportunity driving which jobs people can access. That's a massive distinction because it points to structural inequality, not individual risk. Now the real findings. The profile with the lowest job control and relatively few other stressors? Those people had the lowest cognitive performance at the study's start, especially black participants. That's baseline damage. That's what years of feeling powerless at work does to your mind before you even get to the decline part. But the profile that really alarmed researchers was high emotional labor combined with high job demands. People whose jobs required constant emotional regulation while also demanding they hustle hard. They showed the fastest cognitive decline over time. Not just a little faster, measurably, significantly faster. The kind of decline that, if you extrapolate it forward, matters for long-term outcomes. Let's be specific about what this means in real life. A nurse in an understaffed intensive care unit. A customer service representative handling angry calls 8 hours a day. A teacher in an underfunded school managing 40 kids with 0 classroom support. These jobs aren't just stressful, they're creating a specific neurocognitive signature. High emotional labor means you're managing your feelings constantly. High job demands means the work never stops. Your brain is running the cognitive equivalent of a marathon every single day. And apparently that does something to the trajectory of aging. It accelerates it. The study has limits, obviously. 700 people isn't nothing, but it's not massive. And this is observational data, which means researchers can show correlation, but not prove causation. You can't randomize people into terrible jobs for science. Also, they measured occupation at one point in time. Most people have worked multiple jobs. That lifetime accumulation is harder to track precisely, and the effect sizes, while real, are modest. This isn't do this one weird trick to prevent dementia. It's more like one meaningful variable among many. But here's what shouldn't be lost. Workplace stress has been almost completely absent from dementia prevention conversations. Doctors tell you to exercise, eat Mediterranean, do puzzles, manage your blood pressure. All valid, but nobody says your job might be liquidating your cognitive reserve. That needs to change, because for most adults, work is where we spend a third of our lives. If that third is actively harming your brain, that's worth addressing at every level. Individual, organizational, policy. This sits in a growing field around the exposome, the idea that dementia risk isn't just about one or two factors, but about the total accumulated environmental exposure across a lifetime. Researchers are starting to realize that stuff we thought was irrelevant actually shapes the aging brain profoundly. Noise pollution, air quality, job characteristics, social stress. It all adds up. This study is part of a bigger pivot in neuroscience away from genetics-obsessed thinking toward environment and experience, which is actually optimistic. You can't change your genes, but you can change jobs. You can push for workplace reform. You can advocate for job control and reasonable emotional demands. The most unsettling takeaway here is this. Your paycheck might come with a cognitive cost you're not being told about, and that cost isn't equally distributed. People with fewer educational options get pushed into higher stress jobs and bear the brunt of cognitive decline earlier and faster. That's not just neuroscience. That's inequality showing up in the aging brain. So here's the question that's going to sit with you after this video ends. What would your career look like if you knew exactly how it was affecting your cognition? Would you make different choices? Would companies? Turns out, scientists have been busy, and they're not done yet.